On June 6, 1944, as Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, Lieutenant Thomas Fraser's P51B Mustang, Jerry, limped through the skies over France, black smoke trailing from its damaged Packard Merlin engine. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Leader," Fraser called into his radio. "I'm losing power and altitude fast. Looking for somewhere to put her down." The engine coughed and sputtered before finally seizing completely. Fraser spotted a field near Cambrai and began his emergency approach, knowing he was deep in enemy territory. His altimeter showed barely 500 feet as he lined up with what appeared to be a farmer's field. "Come on, baby, just a little further," he muttered, fighting the controls as the aircraft's nose wanted to drop without power. As the Mustang touched down hard in the muddy French field, Fraser fought to keep the aircraft straight as it bounced twice before settling into the soft earth. The landing gear absorbed most of the impact, but the propeller struck the ground, bending the blades. German soldiers from a nearby observation post were already running toward the crash site, their boots splashing through puddles left by recent rain. Sergeant Klaus Weber reached the aircraft first, his rifle trained on the cockpit. "Raus! Raus! Hände hoch!" he shouted. Fraser slowly climbed out, hands raised, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead where he had struck the gun sight during landing. "I'm hit bad," Fraser said in English, gesturing toward his wounded left arm. "Engine's gone." The German corporal, Hans Kruger, who had picked up some English during 3 years of occupation duty, responded in broken English. "You American pilot, out of aircraft. Now!" Fraser complied, stumbling slightly as he stepped away from his aircraft, the adrenaline beginning to wear off. Weber examined the relatively intact Mustang with growing excitement, walking around the aircraft and noting the minimal damage. This wasn't just another crashed enemy fighter. This was intelligence gold. The propeller was bent from the hard landing, and there was obvious engine damage, but the airframe appeared structurally sound. The wings showed no damage, the fuselage was intact, and even the canopy was unbroken. "This one's in excellent condition," he told his corporal in German. "Radio headquarters immediately. They'll want to see this. I've heard these new American fighters are giving our interceptors serious problems." The corporal, still nervous about the situation and unsure of proper procedure, asked, "Should we destroy it according to standard orders?" Weber shot him a sharp look. "No, you absolute fool. This is intelligence gold worth more than a dozen destroyed aircraft. Guard it with your life. I've heard about these new American fighters from my brother in JG-26. They're causing serious problems for our interceptors, escorting the American bombers all the way to Berlin and back." Weber continued his inspection, noting the aircraft's sleek lines and sophisticated construction. The aluminum skin was smooth and precisely fitted, showing manufacturing quality that impressed even German standards. "Look at this engineering," he said to Corporal Kruger, running his hand along the wing route. "The Americans have built something special here. See how clean the lines are, how everything is integrated. This isn't like the early American fighters we captured in 1943. Those were crude, rushed designs. This is sophisticated engineering." Kruger, who had mechanical training before the war working in his family's automobile repair shop, observed, "The workmanship is excellent, Sergeant. Much better than I expected from American mass production methods. Look at these panel joints. They're perfectly aligned." Weber nodded, continuing his examination. "That's what makes this so valuable. We need to understand exactly what we're facing in these aircraft. Our pilots deserve to know everything about their enemies." Weber opened the engine cowling panels and peered inside, noting the complex installation. "This engine installation is remarkable. Look how everything is organized, how accessible the components are for maintenance. The Americans have learned from their early mistakes. He photographed key components with a small camera from his equipment pack. These photographs will be invaluable to our technical intelligence staff. They need to understand not just performance, but construction methods and design philosophy. Kruger asked, "How will they transport something this large?" Weber had already considered the logistics. They'll bring heavy equipment from the nearest road. This aircraft will be in Germany within a week, and our best engineers will have access to it. 3 days later, Major Klaus Weber of Luftwaffe Intelligence rode alongside a massive flatbed truck carrying the captured P51B toward the Rechlin Test Center. The truck struggled along roads damaged by recent Allied bombing, forcing frequent detours around bomb craters and destroyed bridges. Each detour added hours to their journey and increased the risk of Allied air attack. The truck driver, a grizzled veteran named Hans Müller, had been driving military transports since 1940 and had seen the war's progression firsthand. "How many more kilometers to Rechlin, Herr Major?" he asked, consulting the altered route they had been forced to take around a bombed railway bridge. Weber studied his map, marking off the small towns they had passed, calculating their progress against the planned route. Approximately 200 kilometers remaining. We should arrive tomorrow morning if we don't encounter any more significant delays or air attacks. Hans had heard disturbing rumors about the American fighters from other drivers who transported damaged German aircraft from combat zones. "Is it true that these Mustangs have been causing heavy losses to our bomber interceptors? The drivers bringing back damaged 109s and 190s talk about these American fighters like they're invincible." Weber nodded grimly, remembering the latest loss reports from Defense of the Reich operations that crossed his desk daily. "Unfortunately, yes. Their range is extraordinary, far beyond what we thought possible for a single-engine fighter. They can escort the American bombers all the way to Berlin and back to England. Before these aircraft appeared in large numbers, our interceptors could attack the bomber formations without significant fighter opposition over Germany itself. Now, they must fight through experienced escort fighters throughout the entire mission profile." Hans shook his head, looking older than his years. "The war has changed greatly since 1940, hasn't it, Herr Major? I remember when we were the ones with superior aircraft." Weber replied quietly, staring at the road ahead. "Yes, Hans. More than most people realize or want to admit." The conversation continued as they navigated another detour around a destroyed bridge. "What made these American fighters so effective?" Hans asked. Weber had studied intelligence reports extensively. Several factors. First, they solved the range problem without sacrificing performance, something we haven't managed to do. Second, they're building them in enormous numbers with experienced pilots. Third, their tactics have evolved. They no longer just escort the bombers. They actively hunt our fighters. Hans processed this information. "And this captured aircraft will help us understand how to fight them?" Weber hoped so. "That's the theory. If we understand their capabilities and limitations, we can develop better tactics and perhaps design counters to their advantages." At Rechlin Test Center, Germany's premier aircraft testing facility and the Luftwaffe's most advanced research installation, Oberingenieur Hans Müller, the facility's chief technical officer and no relation to the truck driver, examined the captured Mustang alongside Hauptmann Theodor Rosarius, a seasoned test pilot who had been specifically tasked with evaluating captured Allied aircraft. Müller had extensive experience with both German and captured foreign aircraft, having worked at Rechlin since 1938 and participated in evaluations of captured Polish, French, British, and Russian aircraft. He ran his hands along the aircraft's sleek fuselage, feeling the smooth aluminum skin and examining the precision of the panel joints. Remarkable construction quality. Look at this cooling system design, he said admiringly, pointing to the ventral radiator installation. The Americans have solved the cooling problem in a completely different way than we have. Instead of mounting radiators in the wing roots like we do, they've placed everything in the fuselage belly. Rosarius, eager to get the aircraft operational for testing and knowing that High Command was demanding rapid results, asked, "What's your initial assessment, Herr Müller?" Müller pointed to various components as he spoke, his technical expertise evident in his detailed analysis. The Americans have achieved something we haven't been able to accomplish. They've created a long-range fighter that doesn't sacrifice performance for fuel capacity. This radiator placement is ingenious. By mounting it in the fuselage belly and carefully designing the airflow, they've actually created additional thrust from the heated air exiting the radiator. It's counterintuitive from our design experience, but brilliant in execution. He continued examining the aircraft, noting construction details that differed significantly from German practice. The wing design is exceptional too. See how they've integrated multiple fuel tanks into the wing structure without compromising structural strength. And look at this landing gear design, robust enough for carrier operations, but lightweight for performance. Müller opened access panels to examine internal systems, taking detailed notes in his inspection log. The electrical system is more sophisticated than anything we've seen in previous American fighters. Multiple generators, extensive wiring harnesses, and what appears to be very reliable radio equipment. He photographed key components and systems. The hydraulic systems are also advanced, power-assisted controls that should reduce pilot fatigue during long missions. Technician Schmidt, who specialized in power plants and had worked on captured Allied engines before, examined the engine compartment with particular interest, noting differences from previous captures. The engine is a Packard-built Merlin, correct? We've seen these in captured British aircraft, but this installation looks different. Müller confirmed Schmidt's observation, pointing out specific modifications. Yes, but look at how the Americans have modified and integrated it. They've taken the basic British engine and created something entirely new around it. The cowling design, the air intake system, the exhaust configuration, even the accessory drives, it's all optimized for maximum performance in this specific airframe. Schmidt noted several specific technical differences. The supercharger installation is different from the British versions we've examined. This appears to be a two-stage system with more sophisticated intercooling. And this propeller governor system is much more advanced than what we've seen in previous captures. Müller nodded. The Americans are continuously improving their designs. Each variant we capture shows significant advances over previous versions. Rosarius was impatient to begin testing, knowing that operational units were demanding information about these aircraft. How long until we can have it airworthy? Our fighter pilots are encountering these aircraft daily and need tactical information. Müller assessed the damage carefully, mentally cataloging what would need to be repaired or replaced based on his experience with similar projects. The damage is actually minimal, primarily the propeller assembly, some engine mounts loosened by the hard landing, and minor structural repairs where the landing gear contacted rough ground. Perhaps 3 weeks if we can fabricate the necessary parts using our machine shops. The main challenge will be obtaining the proper fuel. We'll need high-octane aviation gasoline of the type the Americans use. Our standard B4 fuel won't provide proper performance, and using the wrong fuel could damage the engine during testing. Rosarius assured him, That can be arranged through our intelligence networks in occupied territories. I want this aircraft flying as soon as possible. General Major Galland himself has expressed personal interest in the results. In the Rechlin workshop over the following days, skilled technicians worked around the clock in shifts to repair the Mustang under Muller's close supervision. The work was complicated by the need to fabricate parts using German manufacturing techniques and materials that differed from American standards in both metallurgy and precision tolerances. Every component had to be carefully measured and matched to German equivalents, or manufactured from scratch using German materials. Technician Weber approached Müller with a progress report and a significant technical problem. Herr Müller, we've managed to repair the oil cooler using our own manufacturing techniques and materials, but the propeller governor needs complete replacement. The damage from ground contact is too extensive for any repair we can accomplish. Müller examined the damaged component carefully, noting the sophisticated American engineering. Can we fabricate a replacement using our machine shops and engineering capabilities? Weber shook his head. It's theoretically possible, but it will take at least another week, possibly two. The American manufacturing tolerances are extremely precise, much tighter than our usual specifications for similar components. We'll need to machine everything from scratch and then test it extensively to ensure it functions properly. Rosarius, overhearing the conversation during one of his twice-daily progress inspections, suggested an alternative approach that might save valuable time. What about cannibalization from other captured aircraft? Are there other captured American aircraft we can use for compatible parts? Muller's eyes lit up as he remembered other aircraft in the captured inventory. There's a damaged P-47 Thunderbolt at the Oberursel facility. It took heavy flak damage over Frankfurt last month during a bombing mission, but the power plant components might be compatible. The propeller systems use similar governors. Rosarius was decisive, knowing that time was critical with the tactical situation deteriorating daily. Send a team immediately to retrieve any usable components. I want this Mustang operational within 10 days maximum. The tactical situation is deteriorating rapidly, and our pilots need this information as soon as possible. A few days later, Rosarius met with General Major Adolf Galland, the inspector of fighters and one of Germany's most famous aces, in Galland's office at the Reich Air Ministry. Galland had flown over 700 combat missions and understood fighter aircraft capabilities better than almost anyone in the Luftwaffe. His experience gave him unique insight into what information would be most valuable to operational pilots. He got straight to the point without wasting time on pleasantries. Rosarius, I understand you have an American fighter nearly ready for testing? The timing is critical. Our pilots are reporting these aircraft in increasing numbers. Rosarius confirmed with obvious satisfaction. Yes, Herr General. A P51B Mustang, the latest operational variant we've encountered. We expect first flight within 48 hours. Galland leaned forward with intense interest, knowing the strategic implications for the air war over Germany. Excellent. What specific information do you hope to obtain from this evaluation? Rosarius had prepared a comprehensive testing plan based on intelligence gaps identified by operational fighter units. Everything possible, sir. Performance characteristics at various altitudes and configurations, handling qualities in different flight regimes, fuel consumption rates, armament effectiveness and firing patterns, and most importantly, specific vulnerabilities we can exploit tactically. Our pilots are reporting these aircraft are formidable opponents, but we need factual data rather than combat impressions influenced by stress and adrenaline. Galland's expression was serious as he shared his own observations from recent combat reports. Our pilots are reporting these Mustangs are formidable opponents. Some squadron commanders claim they're superior to our Bf-109s at altitudes above 7,000 meters, particularly in high-speed combat. Is this assessment accurate? Rosarius nodded. That's precisely why this testing program is critical. We need factual performance data, not pilot impressions influenced by combat stress, fatigue, and the confusion of air combat. Galland made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences for Luftwaffe training and tactical development. I'm authorizing the formation of your special test unit with full priority support. You'll have access to all captured Allied aircraft for evaluation and training purposes. This is now a high-priority program with direct Reich Air Ministry support. Rosarius was grateful, but also had specific suggestions for organizing the unit's mission. Thank you, sir. I propose calling it the Wanderzirkus Rosarius, a mobile demonstration unit that can travel to operational bases with captured aircraft for hands-on pilot training and tactical development. Galland smiled at the theatrical name, recognizing its propaganda value as well. The traveling circus? Very appropriate and memorable. You'll tour frontline units, showing our pilots these captured aircraft and training them in specific counter-tactics. This could be invaluable for pilot survival and combat effectiveness. On July 8, 1944, the meticulously repaired Mustang sat on the Rechlin flight line, painted in German colors with the distinctive bright yellow nose, tail, and belly that marked all captured aircraft in Luftwaffe service. The yellow paint scheme served both identification and safety purposes, ensuring German anti-aircraft gunners would recognize the aircraft as friendly during test flights. The code T9+HK was clearly visible on both sides of the fuselage, marking it as part of the Special Test Evaluation Program. Test pilot Hauptmann Werner Mulders Jr., son of the legendary ace Werner Mulders, who had been killed in a transport accident in 1941, examined the aircraft one final time before the crucial first flight. Mulders Jr. was an experienced test pilot who had flown dozens of different aircraft types, making him ideal for this critical evaluation. "She looks ready, Herr Rosarius," he said confidently, having spent hours studying the aircraft's systems and translated American flight manuals. Rosarius asked with obvious concern, knowing the risks involved in flying an unfamiliar enemy aircraft. "Are you completely prepared for first flight, Werner? Remember, this is completely different from anything in our current inventory." Mulders had conducted extensive homework, preparing for this historic moment. "I've studied the translated American pilot's manual thoroughly, and I've consulted extensively with Hauptmann Fischer, who successfully flew a captured P-47 Thunderbolt last year. The basic controls are conventional and similar to our aircraft, but with noticeably different response characteristics and handling qualities. The Americans use a different design philosophy in their control systems. More emphasis on stability and pilot comfort, less on pure agility." Muller provided additional last-minute technical advice based on his detailed analysis of the aircraft systems and American design philosophy. "Remember, the Mustang is significantly heavier than our fighters, particularly when fully fueled. Landing speed will be higher, approximately 170 kilometers per hour compared to 140 for the 109, and the ground handling characteristics may be substantially different. The center of gravity is further aft than our fighters, which affects taxi handling." Mulders acknowledged all warnings professionally, demonstrating the thoroughness that made him an excellent test pilot. "Understood completely. How long should this initial evaluation flight last?" Rosarius was appropriately cautious about the first test flight with such an unfamiliar and valuable aircraft. 30 minutes maximum duration, basic handling assessment only, normal takeoff, climb to moderate altitude, level flight evaluation, gentle maneuvering, descent, and normal landing. We need to verify all systems function properly and understand basic handling characteristics before proceeding with any performance testing or combat maneuvering. Milders nodded understanding. I'll treat it exactly like a first flight on a new German prototype, conservative, methodical, and safety-focused throughout. In the Rechlin control tower, controllers and technical observers watched with intense interest as Milders started the Mustang's distinctive Merlin engine. The sound was immediately recognizable from combat encounters, but fascinatingly different when heard from a friendly aircraft. The engine note was smoother and more refined than German inline engines, reflecting different design priorities and manufacturing techniques. Controller Franz, a veteran of hundreds of test flights at Rechlin, opened radio communications. Tower to T9 Plus HK, wind is calm, visibility unlimited. You are cleared for takeoff, runway 09. Weather conditions are ideal for first flight. Milders responded with professional calm. T9 Plus HK acknowledged, beginning takeoff roll now. As the Mustang accelerated down the concrete runway, gathering speed more quickly than expected, Rosarius commented to Muller, "Listen to that engine sound. The Americans have achieved remarkable power output from their version of the Merlin. It sounds much smoother than the British versions we've captured." Muller agreed, noting specific technical differences. "The sound is distinctively different from our DB605 engines. Much smoother power delivery throughout the RPM range, and notice how it maintains consistent power without the rough spots our engines sometimes develop." Controller Franz announced what everyone in the tower could clearly observe. T9 Plus HK is airborne. Initial climb rate appears excellent, substantially better than a BF-109 at this gross weight. The Mustang lifted off cleanly and began climbing at an impressive angle, demonstrating the power and efficiency of its design. Once safely airborne and established in climb, Milders began his systematic initial evaluation, methodically testing each flight regime and reporting his detailed impressions over the radio for the benefit of the technical team monitoring the flight. "Control, this is T9 Plus HK. Initial impressions are very positive. Excellent visibility in all directions except directly aft where the fuselage blocks the view. Very stable gun platform, much steadier than our fighters. Control response is precise but requires more physical effort than the 109, but this provides much more stability for accurate gunnery." Rosarius pressed for more detailed performance information that would be crucial for tactical assessment. "What about climb performance and engine response characteristics? Werner?" Milders' growing enthusiasm was clearly evident in his voice as he put the unfamiliar aircraft through its initial paces. "Climb performance is remarkable. I'm currently at 5,000 meters altitude and still climbing at over 15 meters per second. The Americans have definitely created something exceptional here. Engine response is immediate and smooth throughout the power range. No hesitation, rough spots, or flat spots that might affect combat maneuvering." He continued his methodical assessment, testing different configurations and flight attitudes. "Stall characteristics are very benign, much more forgiving than our 109. The aircraft provides plenty of aerodynamic warning before reaching the actual stall, and recovery is straightforward and predictable." As the planned test flight neared its conclusion, Controller Franz provided current landing information. "T9 Plus HK, wind is now 270 at 15 knots for landing. You're cleared for straight-in approach to runway 27. Emergency equipment is standing by as precautionary measure." Milders acknowledged professionally. "Roger, beginning approach now. Landing speed is significantly higher than our fighters, approximately 170 kilometers per hour, as predicted during briefing. However, the aircraft remains very stable and controllable on final approach." The landing was smooth and professional, demonstrating both the aircraft's good handling qualities and Mulders's skill as a test pilot. As the Mustang rolled to a stop, ground crews surrounded it to begin post-flight inspection and servicing. 2 hours later, in the Rechlin briefing room, Mulders provided his comprehensive assessment to an eager audience including Rosarius, Mueller, and several other officers representing different aspects of the Luftwaffe's operations. The briefing would form the basis for all subsequent testing and tactical development. Gentlemen, this aircraft is genuinely formidable. The performance claims in our intelligence reports were actually conservative, if anything. The Americans have succeeded in creating a fighter that combines the best characteristics of both interceptors and long-range escort fighters. Major Hartmann, representing operational fighter units and responsible for developing new tactical procedures, asked the crucial question that would determine how German pilots would face these aircraft in future combat. What specific advantages does it have over our current Bf-109G variants? Mulders was thorough and systematic in his detailed response, having made careful mental notes during every phase of the test flight. Range is obviously extraordinary. The internal fuel capacity is remarkable for a single-engine fighter. But equally important are the high-altitude performance characteristics above 6,000 meters. Dive performance that appears superior to anything in our current inventory, and concentrated firepower that would be devastating in combat. The 650 caliber machine guns are all wing-mounted with electrical firing systems, converging at approximately 250 meters. When properly aimed by an experienced pilot, the destructive potential is remarkable. Oberst Heinrich, representing the Pilot Training Command, asked about pilot workload and operational considerations. How does it compare to our aircraft from a pilot's perspective? What would our pilots need to know? Mulders considered this question carefully. It's more highly automated than our fighters. Many systems that require constant pilot attention and adjustment in German aircraft are automatic in the Mustang. This allows the pilot to concentrate more on tactics, navigation, and combat, rather than constant aircraft systems management. The comprehensive evaluation continued for weeks, with multiple test flights exploring every aspect of the aircraft's capabilities and limitations, ultimately providing invaluable intelligence that would help German pilots understand and counter this formidable American fighter throughout the remaining months of the war.